and also for the media, isn't it nice to go to an event where you're not considered to be an enemy of the people and you are shown some respect? But I don't want to overdo it. What I want to do this morning is say a few words about what our campaign is about. And it really is asking the American people to kind of think outside of the box, to take a look at our country and the world in a different way than Congress does or often than the media does, and to ask some fundamental questions about what is going on in our nation. That's what I'd like to do for a few minutes and maybe kind of suggest to you why we are where we are. Question: President Trump says the economy is doing great, it's booming. Well, let's take a look at the economy today. If you are the average American worker, despite huge increases in technology and productivity over the last 45 years, today you are not earning a nickel more in real inflation accounted for dollars than you did 45 years ago. Why is that? I want you all to think about it. It's a serious question. Technology is exploding. I remember when I was mayor of Burlington, Vermont in the 1980s, we didn't have a computer in City Hall. The world has radically changed, and yet the average American worker today not making a nickel more than he or she did 45 years ago with in inflation accounted for dollars. Today, in the wealthiest nation in the history of the world, we have more income and wealth inequality than we've had in 100 years. Now, again, we don't talk about it. Congress doesn't talk about it. Media doesn't talk about it terribly often. How do we feel when 3 people in America own more wealth than the bottom half of our country, 160 million people? How do we feel when the top 1% owns more wealth than the bottom 92% at the same time when tonight over 500,000 Americans will be homeless, sleeping out on the streets or in shelters, including 30,000 veterans? When we talk about wages in America and our economy, today in America, half of our people will be living paycheck to paycheck. And I know a little bit about that because I grew up in a family, lived in a rent-controlled apartment in Brooklyn, New York when I was a kid. Family that lived paycheck to paycheck. You know what living paycheck to paycheck means? It means that if your car breaks down and you're living in Hampshire or Vermont and you need to go 30 miles to work, you can't get to work, and you can't afford the $500 you need to fill to get your car repaired. Living paycheck to paycheck means if you get sick today, you can't afford to go to the doctor because you may have an outrageous deductible or no health insurance at all. When we talk about the economy, Trump talked about it in the State of the Union, please remember that in the last 3 years, the billionaires in this country saw an over $800 billion increase in their wealth. And yet last year, in this booming economy, the average American worker in inflation accounted for dollars saw a 1% increase in his or her wages. Why is that? How does it happen that year after year after year, people on top do phenomenally well, year after year after year, working class and middle class of this country struggle, and 40 million people live in poverty? Why is that? I want to throw that idea. I want you to be thinking about that. In terms of education, we are in a great college right here. Thank them for all the wonderful work they do. In New England, we're proud of the high quality of our higher educational system. But let's look at education. Everybody in this room knows that 0 through 4 are the most important years of human development, intellectually and emotionally. Nobody denies that. Yet we have a dysfunctional healthcare system, dysfunctional childcare system, in which working class families all over this country, in Vermont, in New Hampshire, cannot find quality, affordable childcare. And we trust our little kids to people who are paid in many cases lower wages than McDonald's workers, who do not have the training and background they should have in order to educate, and take care of our little ones. How does it happen? How does it happen that in the wealthiest country in the history of the world, we treat working families and the children with such contempt by not providing them with the best early childhood education that we can? I was in this great state a couple of months ago talking to people in education here in Hampshire. And the educators told me that right here in this great state, which by no means is one of the poor states in America, you're doing pretty well economically, teachers in New Hampshire in some school districts, I am told, start off at a salary of less than $29,000 a year. Now, what does that say about our society? We can give hundreds of millions of dollars in contracts to baseball players, but we're telling the young people in America, you want to be a teacher, you're going to start off at a salary that you really can't even survive on. And at that same meeting, I'll not forget this, a woman who was an educator, retired, I think, here in New Hampshire, and she said, you know, let me just tell you something. My son graduated college somewhere around here, and he had a choice. He had a choice of becoming a music teacher, which is what his training was, or working in a state liquor store. He took the job in the liquor store because it paid him a higher salary than working as a teacher. What does that say about our society, our respect for our kids, and our respect for education? In terms of health care, please understand that what I am proposing, when I talk about Medicare for all, I know you'll see TV ads and everything telling you how radical it is. This is what exists in every other major country on earth. We're a few hours away or less from our Canadian neighbors. In Canada, if you end up in the hospital with a serious illness, you're there for a month, you come out, you don't pay a bill. You go to any doctor you want, you go to any hospital you want, you don't take out your wallet, you don't take out your credit card, you go to any doctor you want. Now, how does it happen that in Canada they spend 50% per capita of what we spend? We spend twice as much per person on health care as do the people of Canada, and yet we have in America 87 million people who are uninsured or underinsured. 30,000 who die every single year because they don't get to a doctor when they should. 500,000 people go bankrupt because of medically related illnesses. Think about the obscenity of a situation where somebody in this room, God forbid, is diagnosed with cancer, is struggling, fighting for their lives. And while you fight for your lives, you got to worry about your family being in financial ruin. Why is that? Why is that? Why is it that today in America, when the scientists tell us that climate change is an existential threat to our nation and the world, that we are fighting for the survival of the planet, why does it happen that you have a fossil fuel industry that receives tens and tens of billions of dollars every year in tax breaks and subsidies in order to destroy our planet? Why does it happen that the pharmaceutical industry receives huge tax breaks and subsidies while they charge us the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs? And everybody in this room knows about the opioid epidemic because New Hampshire has suffered as badly as any state. And understand that the opioid manufacturers, when they learned or knew that the products that they were selling were addictive and killing people, do you know what they did? They hired more salespeople. That's what they did. Corruption, greed of an extraordinary level. Now, why is that? How does all that happen? Well, it takes us back to a fundamental principle of money in politics. Money in politics. So right now you have a billionaire president who is a pathological liar, who is corrupt, who is a racist, a sexist, a homophobe, a xenophobe, and a religious bigot. The big money interests are not unhappy with this guy. He's okay. Many of these corporations not unhappy with him. He gave them huge tax breaks. 2 years ago, he gave $1 trillion in tax breaks to the wealthiest 1% and large profitable corporations, such that Companies like Amazon, owned by the wealthiest guy in America, last year paid zero in federal income taxes, less than you paid. How does that happen? Why does that happen? And the answer is that we have a corrupt political system. That's the simple fact. It's a system, and I know this is hard stuff, and I know people don't want to hear it, and I know people say, Bernie, I just don't want to hear it. But we got to talk about it, because the future of democracy is at stake in this election, actually. So what are we talking about? You're talking about a president who's a billionaire, who promised during his campaign, his tax bill, you all remember that, wasn't going to benefit the rich, it was going to benefit working families. Well, over a 10-year period, 83% of the benefits went to the top 1%. And when you talk about money in politics, we got a former mayor of New York City who has a record, every reason in the world he's entitled to run for president. No problem with that. Smart guy. But he is spending hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars to buy the election. There is something wrong with that. As a candidate, let him run. That's fine, everybody. Want to run for president, run for president. How do we feel about living in a so-called democracy when a billionaire, multi-billionaire, 55 billion, can spend unlimited sums of money? How do we feel when we have candidates in the Democratic Party right now? And I'm reading some headlines from newspapers about Pete Buttigieg. Pete Buttigieg has most exclusive billionaire donors of any Democrat. That was from Forbes. The Hill. Pete Buttigieg tops billionaire donor list. Fortune. Pete Buttigieg takes lead as big business candidate in 2020 field. Washington Post. Pete Buttigieg lures even closer look from Wall Street donors following strong Iowa caucus performance. Forbes magazine. Here are the billionaires backing Pete Buttigieg's presidential campaign. I like Pete Buttigieg, nice guy. But we are in a moment where billionaires control not only our economy, but our political life. And let me tell you something. I'm very proud of the campaign we're running in many, many respects. Proud of the great victory we won in Iowa. We won by over 6,000 votes. But I'll tell you what I'm most proud of. I am most proud that at this particular moment in this campaign, we have received more campaign contributions, over 6 million contributions, from more people, over 1.5 million people, averaging $18 apiece, than any candidate in the history of American politics. And I'm enormously proud of that. What does that say? What that says, and I say this with enormous pride, is that this is a campaign of the working families of America. We are funded by the working class of this country. The profession that funds our campaign most, it's not Wall Street, it's not the drug companies, not the insurance companies, it is teachers. It is workers from Walmart, workers from Target. I help those people in Amazon, help people at Disney get at least a $15 minimum wage, and those people who have no money are kicking in $10, $20 an hour campaign. So here's what the whole campaign is about. It's not I can give you a list of the 50 different proposals that we brought forth, and they're on our website. Check them out. But that campaign is more than that. This campaign is about which side are you on. That's an old Woody Guthrie song. Anyone remember old Woody Guthrie? He wrote a song which I will not sing for you. You would not want to hear it. But basically, which side are you on? And right now, we need policies in Washington that reflect the needs of the working families of this country who have been too long neglected. We need to raise the minimum wage to a living wage, $15 an hour. We need to tell the wealthy and the powerful they will start paying their fair share of taxes. We need to make public colleges and universities tuition-free and cancel all student debt with a modest tax on Wall Street speculation. We certainly need to end this dysfunctional and cruel healthcare system and pass Medicare for all. We need not to ignore the existential threat of climate change, but lead the world in transforming our energy system and telling the fossil fuel industry that their short-term profits are not more important than the future of this planet. But to do all of that stuff, We are going to need a government that unapologetically represents working people and not wealthy corporations, not billionaires. And that is what this campaign is about. Now, you may disagree with me on this issue. Fine. I don't think everything that we say is 100% correct. It needs discussion. Nobody has all of the answers. But that's basically the issue. Whose side are you on? Do you think if you're collecting money from dozens and dozens of billionaires, you're going to stand up to the drug companies? And you're going to throw their CEOs in jail if they have acted criminally in killing people all over this country with opioids that they knew were addictive and killing people? Think that's going to happen? If you're taking money from the healthcare industry, you think you're going to take them on and say, hey, guess what? The United States will join every other major country on earth and guarantee healthcare is a human right, not a privilege. You think you're going to take on the fast food industry and say, you know what? Pay your workers a living wage, at least $15 an hour. You think you're going to stand with the unions of this country and make it easier for workers to join unions and earn decent wages and benefits? Think you're going to take on the fossil fuel industry, whose product is destroying this land? That is what this campaign is about. It's not about this issue. Tonight I'll be in a debate and I'll ask us 500 questions about this issue, that issue, and that's fine. You got to hear the answers. But it's deeper than that. Which side are you on? Are you on the side of a working class of this country, which has been battered for the last 45 years? Are you willing to take on the greed and corruption of the billionaire class and the 1%? Or will you continue to stand with the big money interest? That is what this campaign is about. And as somebody who is the son of the working class, somebody whose father came to this country at the age of 17 without a nickel in his pocket, couldn't speak a word of English, had no education, very limited education, never made any money in his life, grew up in a rent-controlled apartment. I apologize to nobody in my desire to stand with the working families of this country. Thank you all very much.